Welcome to Gettysburg College's Channel 34 News. I'm Holden Mills, filling in for Brian Nordcross and Samantha Spence. I'm going to be filling you in on the past 2 weeks. Last week, multiple college clubs, led by the International Club, were able to conduct a first annual African Heritage Week. The week consisted of 13 events, ranging from an African finance lecture delivered by Malawi Finance Minister Goodall Gondwe, to a speech on African foreign policy by Tanzanian Ambassador Augustine Mahinga, to a discussion of racism on campus at an open E-Race meeting. The week ended with the Big Night in Africa dinner, an event that brought not just Gettysburg campus, but also some members of the Hack and Dickinson student bodies to celebrate African heritage. The night was headlined by a fashion show of traditional African clothes and a performance by Gettysburg students who have been learning how to perform traditional African music.
Always providing for me, great is your mercy toward me, great is your grace.
There is plenty of traditional food and dance, creating what many thought was a perfect conclusion to a very successful week. Last week, Gettysburg College received a very important visitor, the ambassador to the United Nations from the country of Tanzania. Coming to participate in Gettysburg College's first annual African Heritage Week, Ambassador Augustine Mahinga was given a tour of the campus, sat in on Goodall Gondwe's lecture about finance in Africa, and delivered his own lecture to the foreign policy of Tanzania and Africa. Channel 34's own Chase Raywinkle was able to sit down with the Tanzanian ambassador and talk about his stay in Gettysburg, as well as what he thought about Gettysburg international student programs and the events planned for this week.
Well, I've just come, but the little I know about Gettysburg is very encouraging. First, it's a small university compared to the university which I went to in Toronto. In the 70s already, it had a population of over 15,000 students. Actually, to be precise, it was about 20,000, with a substantial student population of African students and students from other parts of the world. But it was really just a beginning and opening to African students in particular. We could hardly count ourselves on our fingers, really, at that time. But I understand Gettysburg is also beginning to have an international outlook and character, with a growing African student population. And it's not only African in the sense of Africa. Many people think Africa is one country, but it's 53 countries. And the countries represented here by the small African student population is encouraging. But most encouraging is the whole program that has been designed to study African issues, African history, African politics, African development, and globalization issues. I think this college has a tremendous potential to be a very good center of learning for African studies. And its small size gives tremendous opportunity to students to interact with the faculty. And I think the school has been here for many years and is well resourced, so it can invest on books or research, and could be one of the outstanding small colleges, but significant in African studies in the United States.
As part of the first African Heritage Week, Professor Elaine Stillwagon, chair of the Economics Department, delivered a speech on AIDS and its relation to poverty in African countries. Her assertion was that poor economic conditions, poor health conditions, and increased poverty made it easier for the virus to spread in African countries more than other parts of the world. To address the current economic situation in Africa, the Finance Minister of Malawi, Honorable Goodall Gondwe, discussed the steps his country is taking to improve their financial condition. With that story, Channel 34's own Andrew Orange.
The Honorable Goodall E. Gondway spoke at the second annual Derek K. Gondway Memorial Lecture. The lecture is an annual memorial for his brother, the late Derek Gondway, a former economics professor here at Gettysburg College. According to Elaine Stillwagon, chairperson of the economics department,
you would not have known how well loved he was, or the impact he had on students, colleagues, and the administration of Gettysburg College. And those who only knew him here would not have images of the land where he was born, where he returned to work, and where he was laid to rest.
This annual lecture brought over 150 people to Penn Hall Lyceum on October 24th. Before the lecture, Jessica Gondway, daughter of the late professor, performed one of her dad's favorite songs.
My home is
The Honorable Goodall Gondway is the Minister of Finance for the Republic of Mali and also a Member of Parliament. He spoke about the initiatives that his government was working on and what further steps he was personally taking to combat the economic disparity of his country.
Poverty that prevails there. As Ms. Stillwagon has just said, I am a Member of Parliament. Every week I go into my constituents' villages, and I partake in the life there.
Gettysburg College made history by becoming the first college ever to participate in Pantene's Beautiful Lengths campaign. Here with that story is John Lawler.
This past Friday, men and women from across the campus came together to show their support for cancer sufferers by donating their own hair to the Pantene Beautiful Lengths campaign. This campaign was developed by Pantene to provide wigs made from real hair to women who have lost their own hair due to cancer treatment. Gettysburg College was bestowed with the honor of being the first college to participate in this initiative. The college rose to the occasion by recruiting over 70 members of the community to participate. Two of the co-chairs of the event, Allie and Jessica, shared the story behind the initiative.
I had a phone call from Pantene. Someone who works for Pantene and is in charge of the campaign was the Gamify at Gettysburg, so they wanted to kick off their college campaign. So we're actually the first college campaign. Yes. And so Gamify got the Panhellenic and also the Women's Center involved.
And we just started meeting with each other, the school, and then had conference calls with this Pantene program, and they kind of guided us on how to run this best, and then we just kind of used our knowledge about philanthropy events on campus, and we've had a really great turnout. We had 140 girls in the spring pledge to cut their hair. So our goal is to have that many, 10% of the women on Gettysburg College campus.
To find out more about Pantene Beautiful Lengths campaign and to learn how you can make a difference, please visit www.beautifullengths.com.
Also sponsored by the Women's Center was Gettysburg College's annual Women's Conference, boasting such illustrious names as President Catherine Haley Will, Dean Julie Ramsey, and Janet Riggs. Here with the story is resident chauvinist Sebastian Di Natale.
Thanks, Holden. Hi, everyone. Sebastian Di Natale here. Today, a triumphant day for women everywhere. Yes, that's right. The annual Women's Conference was held today right outside these doors in Bowen Auditorium, hosting a wide variety of the most esteemed women on the Gettysburg College campus. Such illustrious faces included Catherine Haley Will, Dean Ramsey, and the illustrious Janet Riggs, our provost. Among things discussed were how powerful women are in the workplace and what it means to be a woman leader. There was no dull moment for this reporter as he eagerly awaited the interview with one of the key players, Miss Caroline Coker.
It was a great success. We had a wonderful program this year. It was great to have the president of the college there supporting the Women's Center. We have 2 lunches left for the semester. Our next one is on November 14th, and it's Kathy Bradley and Andy Flagg on reading your roommate, which is just tips for women to get along in their living situations.
Yes, after all this happening in just one day, all this reporter can say, "You go, girlfriend." For everyone here at GTV News, I'm Sebastian Di Natale. Sweet and sassy.
The MySpace Music Tour, sponsored by VO5, stopped by Gettysburg last weekend. The concert was headlined by Say Anything and Hello Goodbye, with special guest appearances by Polly Six and Young Love. With more on this story is Chase Raywinkle.
Thank you, Holden. This past Friday, November 2nd, CAB was able to get the MySpace.com music tour, which was great because we got 3 emo bands and a Japanese popular music band. While this may not be the music that I'm particularly interested in, there were a few people who seemed to care about Hello Goodbye, Say Anything, Young Love, maybe not Young Love, and the J-pop band Polly Six. Yes, there were some of those who kind of danced and kind of sang with them and really kind of enjoyed themselves. So I hope to see you there next time for when CAB puts on the next big event, for bands that we might sort of know from somebody that we kind of liked music sometime. All right, see you later. Have a good day. Back to you, Holden.
Shakespeare also visited campus in the form of the Allen and Nightingale Players, who performed his comedy, Measure for Measure. Directed by Professor Chris Kaufman and stage designed by Chair of the Theater Department, Jerry Hansen, the production was a resounding success, with students, families, and community members in attendance. And now for the announcements. RISE is sponsoring Be a Kid Night, Saturday the 10th from 7 to 11 at the RISE House. Thanksgiving dinner will be served the 13th. Please come with friends in groups of 8, 10, 12, or 14. Auditions for A Streetcar Named Desire will be held November 10th and 11th at Klein Theater. All the residence halls will be closing for Thanksgiving break Wednesday the 22nd at 10 a.m. If you need break housing, you're expected to go into CNAB and fill out a housing request form. The Black Student Union is showing the movie Blackout in Joseph's Theater at 7 on the 12th. After the movie will be a discussion led by a mystery speaker. And with sports is Channel 34's own Ali Salatino and Deontay Austin.
Good evening, and welcome to GSPN. Tonight you have with you Deontay Austin
and Ali Salatino.
Gettysburg football team defeated McDaniel 38-14 with a 6-3 record on the season. This is Gettysburg's first winning season since 1995.
Also, the women's rugby team defeated Muhlenberg 63-15 in their national advancement to the D4 championship in Boston. Good luck to the Lady Bullets.
Unfortunately, the men's soccer team lost to Johns Hopkins 4-1 in the Centennial Conference Men's Soccer Championship.
Also, both the men and women swimming team defeated Washington College in the season opener. Way to go.
Good luck to all sports that are participating in the playoffs this season, and good luck to the spring sports that are coming up.
This week's Gettysburg Exchange features the topic of race relations on campus, featuring members of the Black Student Union, Allies, and E-Race, with a special guest professor, Scott Hancock. Here's Leo Vaccaro.
Hello and welcome to the third installment of the Gettysburg Exchange here on Gburg TV. Thank you for tuning in so far. We have another great program lined up for everyone to enjoy for the next 15 minutes or so. And I'd like to start out by introducing the people that we have with us, beginning with Professor Scott Hancock, who is a professor in the History and Africana Studies departments. Then we have Aaron HURD, who's also known as Ron. He's the president of the Black Student Union. To my left, I have Dominique Volney, who is the second vice president of the NAACP, as well as a member of E-Race of the Black Student Union, and is also a project coordinator for immersion projects at CPS. And then finally, last but not least, we have JAIMIE SCHOCK, who is the vice president of Allies, as well as the opinions editor at the GETTYSBURGIAN. Now, basically, the topic of today's show is a slightly older one in terms of the last time it was published, although is definitely still a very relevant and important topic at Gettysburg College, and it has to do with Professor Hancock's last article in the GETTYSBURGIAN, an opinions piece that appeared on May 3rd of this past semester. Basically, the name of the title is the name of the article is there a racist environment at Gettysburg College? Yes, and title provided by JAIMIE SCHOCK, of course, opinions editor. The first line of this article states, Are many, maybe most white students, administrators, faculty, and staff at Gettysburg College racist? Yes. And I was wondering if you could start us off by a few comments about what may have led you to write this article and what were some of the main points that you conveyed or tried to convey in writing this article.
Well, what the initial impetus for the article was a series of incidents over the course of the year, primarily involving black students. Some black students being called names, nigger, and the writing of the nigger lover on the door of a student's room. And that there seemed to be a lack of organized institutional response to those incidents. And these incidents aren't anything new. They've been going on, like I said, in the article every year since I've been here. But the response seems to vary considerably from year to year. And part of our concern in our AFRICANA studies program was our students of color, minority students, and African American students in particular, feeling a bit isolated because there's that lack of an institutionalized response. And the primary argument of that line that you read, which was intended to be provocative, is predicated on how I'm defining racism. That it's not just simply somebody who calls names, it's not simply the KKK, but any system, institution that perpetuates, whether actively or inactively, advantage that's based on race is a racist institution, or racist individuals who do that by choosing to do nothing or ignoring it. So that's I think the heart of what I'm trying to get at there.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to read another section, and I'm glad that you actually brought up the definition of racism that you offered. Very insightful definition. That this refers to the white students at Gettysburg College and saying, I don't care how much you respect people of different races. At the end of the day, most white benefit from living in a society that has established and perpetuated inequality based on race. If you do nothing to alter that system, you're a racist. I was wondering if you could also comment a little bit about what you're trying to do in this article to the entire student body of Gettysburg College.
Well, get them to think a little bit deeper with a little more complexity, because I think our American society, especially since the Civil Rights Movement, wants to think of racist and racism as the fringe element, the KKK and things like that. And so we can all feel good about condemning them. But I'd say, well, any idiot can do that. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that they're racist. So by feeling good about doing that, I think our tendency is to then excuse ourselves from doing anything else or taking any further action. Because as long as we're not out there calling people names, as long as we're not out there denying people jobs based on color or any other condition, then we can say, well, we're not that. And granted, I think there are important distinctions between most Americans, most white Americans and other Americans, most Gettysburg College students, and people like the KKK. They're not the same, but it doesn't mean that we're not guilty by complicity, even if it's through the sin of omission rather than the sin of commission.
Yeah. Now, I've been meaning to ask you also the choice in the timing for the article, and I was wondering if that had any, if that was actually a choice of yours to wait until the spring, or in fact, actually the last issue of the Gettysburgian to get this out.
I'd say actually it's bad timing.
Okay.
Because I mean, it was, like I said, it was prompted more by these series of incidents that kind of came to a head. I wish that we had been more on the ball, perhaps, or I had been at least, and done this sooner, so it could have been prompted more dialogue during the semester when it came out. It was, I think, unfortunate that I didn't think to do this sooner, because then it's the last issue, it's the summer, it kind of falls off the radar screen a bit. So.
Well, I'm actually going to take that question and ask JAIMIE if you can talk a little bit about what types of responses, if any, of this article.
I received a few email responses, a few people wanting to write responses and then realizing that it was the end of the issue and could not. A few people just wanted to either redefine it or even elaborate on what you said. There were, I received a few negative ones and a bunch of positive ones. Verbally, I received both. Some decided to respond directly to me in email form usually. When it was verbal, people were a little shyer. In email form, they tended to disagree with your definitions of racism, saying that if you don't blatantly perform anything racist against someone, then you can't be a racist, which I don't necessarily agree with.
Well, and I think there's a legitimate disagreement there, but I mean, my intent is to at least provoke some a little bit more complex thought about what we mean by the term.
Yeah, I think that let's take a second to use the definition that Professor Hancock provided and turn it into a question to say, do you think Gettysburg College, and I'll start with Jamie, we'll move down, do you think Gettysburg College is a system that institutes and perpetuates the exploitation and continued inequality of groups and people based on race?
I don't necessarily think the system is set up for that, but I think the system may allow that, in that there are not things in the system to prevent it. So people who work under the system definitely make that happen. I think it can be fixed. It would take a lot of work and perhaps some changing of employment, but I think it can be fixed.
Dominique, do you mind commenting on that?
I would like to say that there's a point in the article Professor Hancock talks about the lack of organized response, whereby it could be through email or some other media form. And I do think that Gettysburg College perpetuates a kind of, well, I think all in all, there's a lack of communication in regards to administration trickling down information to the students. So I think with that, as a student of color, it perpetuates that in the sense my safety is and can be in jeopardy. And when it is, I feel as though not enough people know about it to help prevent or at least lessen that in the future. And I think if we expose what happens in, not in like after dirty laundry kind of way, but as a way to bring about awareness, then we can move on.
Ron, would you like to comment?
I also believe that, Gettysburg College, this is an environment that does perpetuate racism, not directly, but in an indirect manner, because if you look at exactly what happened last year, what happened in years past, each thing has been dealt with on an individual basis. And considering the history of our country, the Civil Rights Act, slavery, different acts of racism that have occurred and organized reaction to this, the administration is still developing, which is great that they're doing it, but they're still developing a policy exactly how to react to the situation. It is 2007. And while I commend them on taking this action, I think it's way overdue to do so as well. And I also think that by them not doing that, or by, all of a sudden taking this step, that a lot of people are either considering it illegitimate or people are just unsatisfied with the action that is going on.
Professor Hancock, do you think that Gettysburg College is ahead of or behind where the average college should be in the United States?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, we're ahead of some. We're further along than some, but I was just in a meeting with a few trustees and the provost a few weeks ago, and they were talking about diversity, and my comment to them was, since I've been here in 2001, Gettysburg College has always talked about diversity, and I think they're sincere, but I don't think they really get what that means The last year or so, last year or two, I think perhaps they're starting to. But it's not. I think the premise of the question, maybe what we're talking about, is Gettysburg College where it should be as far as how they deal with these kind of incidents. I would say no, definitely not. We're not. Like Ron said, it's they're still figuring this out now. It seems like it's something that should have happened a long time ago. Plans should have been in place. But if there were no incidents like this, if there were no explicit incidents of somebody getting called names or the vandalism on the door, things like that, that would negate the premise of my argument, because the premise is that do we have an institution that perpetuates white advantage, perpetuates advantage based on race? Even if we don't have those kind of incidents, if there's not a systematic way of approaching how to dismantle a national educational system, a political system, economic system, and so forth, based on race, then we're participating in its perpetuation, even unintentionally. So therefore, it's still not where it should be.
Hey, I guess we should probably move on to more of a proactive policy discussion on this, right? We can start with Jamie if you're ready. And the question basically is, what steps do you think Gettysburg College should take, if any, towards these different ends that have been discussed?
Well, and I know it was brought up already, but I think communication is probably the keyest thing that we could possibly do, because it has to happen before anything else can happen. And when you can't even meet with some of the people who work with college, when they provide such small amounts of time to speak with them, and like when you have students who are making so much change and progress on campus, and then they kind of hit a wall, then it shows both the students who are working and the students who are watching that, well, this happens every time. And it doesn't necessarily happen every time, but that's the perception. So as soon as we can start with communication, then things can start being changed.
Dominique?
I concur. To add on to that, I know at the NAACP meeting and BSU meetings, we spoke about, in conjunction with the communication with the AFRICANA studies, having somewhat of a protocol in regards to reporting hate crimes or racial slurs, and that would be to contact SNS, but not only SNS, but the Gettysburg Borough Police, because we're not just a Gettysburg College community, we're also part of the Gettysburg community in general. So what affects us also can trickle into the community, and the community also affects us. So we need to have official documentation.
Great, and for your answering the question, do you mind if you could also talk a little bit about what BSU does in a given year?
Sure. Yeah. I also believe that the Gettysburg College faculty needs to be addressed. We've done this from a bottom-up perspective, which is great because you're bringing students and making them aware, as we have this year, with various books like White Like Me and Diversity Insight Sessions with the Department of Residence Life. Furthermore, there have been diversity initiatives within residence life. Safety and security has also been trained by reading this book and things of that nature. However, those come off as a lot more reactionary measures, and I believe that we need to have a much more proactive administrative action. The Black Student Union has various events. Our mission is to actually educate and enlighten people by showing them through various venues, by having arts, whether it be step shows or informational sessions about what the BSU is doing, by holding karaoke events, things that are actually going to bring the campus together. We try to sponsor events with groups that are very different from us in order to expand our demographic and reach more people, because you're not going to accomplish anything by what a lot of people say, preaching to the choir. A lot of people who already know exactly what's going on. Dean Julie Ramsey offered to pay for a racial justice institute this past summer. It's about $300. She offered everyone in college life, which basically falls under almost everybody, including safety and security. It was in Lancaster with a lady named Achebe and another individual, and they would talk about the isms, the system of oppression in the United States of racism for the most part. And only one other person decided to go to it, and that was Ms. Kim Davidson. That's alarming to me. If you tell students that we want you to, realize that you have this white privilege and that silence is acceptance of it, but you don't have the people who we're supposed to be looking up to doing the same thing and setting the example, that tells me that they don't care, for the most part. While it is the summer, we're talking over 100 people who are saying, I don't have the time to do something in order to care about students of color and other people who are systematically taken advantage of.
Professor, how long was that workshop or the conference?
The workshop was 2.5 to 3 days.
Okay. I think that's an excellent example because there are some things that college is doing well. It's not all bad, and some of it's things that might not seem direct. The African Heritage Week last week, when they put it on the landing page, and it wasn't, I think it was done appropriately. It wasn't like, hey, look, we got some black folks doing cool stuff. It was thoughtful, it was scholarly as well as cultural, and the college supported that actively. So the college is doing some things well to make minority students and other groups, whether it's allies or the BSU or other groups, I think they support these clubs, at least if my impression is wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they support these clubs sincerely, but that's a good example of how the college is being more proactive in how they think about this. So it's great that they offered to pay for the conferences through the registration or when people stay. But if you're going to ask people to go in the middle of summer or something like that, the reality is, people are busy, so how are you going to make them care enough? You know what you do? You say, we're going to pay you to go. We're not just going to pay for it. We're going to pay you to go because we value your time and we think this is important enough that it's worth the resources. So we're going to not only pay the $300, we're going to give you $500 or whatever it would be to spend 3 days. And the reality is that I think some people are going to say, not just out of greed, but they're going to feel like, okay, the college is saying my time is important. And they're recognizing that by giving me something back to take time out of my week or from my family or whatever it is and go do something like this. And that's the way the college can be, like the saying, proactive in approaching these issues.